The US has never had a rival like China. It's equal or more in technology, trade, and military power. As James King, our senior research fellow, puts it, the era of China as the world's leading tech power has arrived. In 2023, the heads of the intelligence agencies of the Five Eyes countries, that's the US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, together accused China of intellectual property theft. But it would be quite wrong to take comfort from the delusional mantra you still hear that China can only adopt others' technology. It has emphatically proven that it can invent the best itself. In October, it showed that China could force the US to back down over tariffs by threatening to withhold critical minerals, where China commands more of the global supply than the White House had cared to notice. Yet it is striking where China chooses not to get involved. It wants to invest in the Middle East, not broker an elusive peace, exactly the same in Ukraine. It presents a rival to US power without mimicking it. One reason the US has been so confused in how to respond. When President Xi Jinping met President Trump in October, it showed that China could force the US to back down over tariffs by threatening to withhold critical minerals, where China commands more of the global supply than the White House had cared to notice. So this year has clarified what we face. We are in a world of two superpowers in rising competition with each other. Each says it does not want a war with the other, but the possibility is not zero, and it would be catastrophic for the world. Even without that, though, their competition for power is a threat to the peace and prosperity of others. In the case of the US's allies, they must now contemplate what was unthinkable, to have to defend themselves against the US itself in trade and perhaps security. First, China, how it's moved ahead in key parts of the technology race and the challenge that presents. I'm then going to talk about the US and the implications of Trump's actions, but I'm going to spend most time on how others should respond, how to protect their own interests, how to work together to salvage international order. Even, we should not be embarrassed about the value of this, an order based on liberal values, the respect for law and individual rights. Europe is failing that challenge and the UK making a muddle of it. Others are doing better. So let me start with China. The US has never had a rival like China. It's equal or more in technology, trade, and military power. As James King, our senior research fellow, puts it, the era of China as the world's leading tech power has arrived. At Chatham House, we've built up a superb China team precisely because the decisions made by China affect all our work. James adds that in industry after industry, Chinese manufacturers are making cutting-edge technology at prices that Western competitors cannot match. In just a few years, China has become the leading exporter of electric vehicles. It's not just those, solar panels and turbines. You can see the same thing happening in pharmaceuticals, batteries, 5G telecoms, factory automation, and shipbuilding. China has spent decades pursuing this supremacy through mineral deals, loans, sending students around the world, keeping its currency low. And without question, through theft of intellectual property. In 2023, the heads of the intelligence agencies of the Five Eyes countries, that's the US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, together accused China of intellectual property theft. But it would be quite wrong to take comfort from the delusional mantra you still hear that China can only adopt others' technology. It has emphatically proven that it can invent the best itself. China's progress may not be sustainable. The economy has plenty of problems. Competition is ferocious, often driving manufacturers into losses, even if the state-owned banks maintain support. And President Xi warned about this in July. Pressure from the middle class for a rise in living standards, most easily achieved by letting the currency appreciate further, may slow down exports. A demographic crisis is looming as the population falls. But for the moment, China is a powerhouse of cheap exports to the world with not much interest in reciprocal trade. What does China want? As our Dr. Yu Jie has written, he wants domination of China's region, self-sufficiency in technology, and the dependency of other countries. It is fair to say China seeks the destabilizing of the West, including allies such as Japan, hence its support to Russia over Ukraine in supplying drone engines and buying oil. And while President Xi has said he supports global governance, He wants emphasis on sovereignty more than human rights and a greater role for China in world institutions, where it is very successful in steadily placing more officials. Yet it is striking where China chooses not to get involved. It wants to invest in the Middle East, not broker an elusive peace, exactly the same in Ukraine. It presents a rival to US power without mimicking it. One reason the US has been so confused in how to respond. It does, though, in this case, come down to whether Trump wants to defend Taiwan. And I thought the national security strategy, eloquent, but not quite with Trumpian drama, to go back to your point, was interestingly muted about that. It did say we want to protect Taiwan because of two things, chips and sea lanes, nothing about democracy, and nothing really about defending Taiwan for itself. And the language about countering China over that was, I thought, a whole degree more restrained than the US has used in the past. I can see why Taiwan is finding reason, indeed, to invest in its own defense. Anyone who sits here or anywhere else and forecasts what the US is going to do in any circumstance pretty well is not doing something very valuable. But I think, less likely than in the past is my guess. Trump, I think, is a symptom of the US's anxiety about the rise of China and its confusion about how to respond, and he's accelerated, in my view, the rise of China, and that extends to some extent to Africa. On the other hand, while it looked as if he was not going to give Africa very much attention at all, he did make these strikes in northwestern Nigeria over the Christmas period, usefully calling more global attention to the threat there of destabilizing all those coastal countries. You may say, if you're an African country, be careful what you wish for in terms of more attention. I think they would have liked the restoration of US aid, which has been phenomenally disruptive in being pulled away. And that handed a lot of sympathy and potentially financial dependency to China if it chooses to take it up. And the Chinese foreign minister is about to make a tour of some key African countries within days, I think, including some quite troubled ones. But he hasn't pulled out or deprived it of attention as much as seemed the case in the first. But broadly, the things he's doing hand China an advantage it didn't expect, I think.
Throughout your discussion, I think you've alluded to significant dependency on trade with the US, but one could argue that our dependency with China on trade, supply chains and investment in our companies and real estate is only getting more in the UK and across Europe.
Sorry, our dependency on
China.
On China.
Do you think our government should be doing more to intervene and avoid that trend?
It needs to decide where it's going to protect domestic industries and where it isn't. So cars is a big choice. Wind turbines, are we going to have a domestic industry or not? It needs clearer decisions on this. You can feel the sort of panic muddle in Whitehall when one of these questions comes up that needs a decision, which the embassy was one. But actually the trade ones, like do you buy a whole pile of wind turbines and give China the off switch, is one of the ones coming down the line. They don't all need to be in, we'll do it the UK way and shut out China. But they do need to be clearer one way or the other. Keir Starmer's supposed to be going to China in a couple of weeks. I advise going with a bit more clarity on these actual decisions.